Jedi Apprentice. Number 5. The Defenders of the Dead. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi are sent to the planet Melida, Daan to rescue the Jedi Knight Tahl, who had been sent to try and negotiate peace between two warring peoples, who call themselves the Melida and the Daan. Now, in the first chapter of the book, it is said that there has been a bloody civil war raging on the planet for 30 years. As we learn later on, what ignited the initial conflict has been forgotten. I found that 30 years to have been a very short time frame for this to have been the case. Not that 30 years is short, but given the number of battles of Zehava, which I think is the capital city, that have taken place, and the number of mausoleums that have been built on both sides, seems to be short for that to be the case, because a little later on in the book, they reference times that the kids remember where there were beautiful cities. And with the elders, it seems, I think this is the most recent bloody civil war. I think there have been actually century-long cycles of this. Not unlike real history, this is just a bit more determined to bring about an end to the world. So, the mission is to return Tahl to the Jedi Temple, to get in and then get out, and to not become involved. I'll give you a guess as to whether or not it goes so easily. Nothing ever does. They have a single contact in the Melida, the leader, Wahuti, who said he would help them get Tahl off planet. So they're going towards Zehava. This capital city has changed flags many times. Melida, then Daan, then Melida, over and over again. You get the idea. The Jedi fall into a sort of pit trap, trying to find their way in, and come across a mausoleum known as a Hall of Evidence. We learn this name, and the planet is covered in them. Really? The whole planet? Well. And this is the structure you see on the book's front cover, the entrance to one of the Halls of Evidence, where there are rows of holograms of soldiers who fought and died in this never-ending cycle of wars between the two warring peoples, often starting with the fathers who die in the first or second battle of their time. Then their widows take up their arms, then their children, often while they are still children. And after many, many cycles of this, the entire planet is dying. So, they get out of the mausoleum and eventually do meet Wahuti. And as he is leading them through the city, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan notice two things. One, they see no people older than 20 or younger than 50. The wars have completely wiped out the middle generation. Of course, Wahuti, being Melida, says the Daan have wiped out the middle generation. But you can guess what the truth is. Two, they see that there are, all around the cities, there are graffiti messages that spell out things like, "The young will rise. We are everyone." They ask Wahuti who the young are, and he says they're just kids causing trouble. Okay, here we go. So, Wahooty then leads Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to the Melida base, where they are supposed to negotiate Tahl's release. Wahooty says to them, "At this point you have to leave your lightsabers behind. If you break this rule, the negotiations will go badly for you." They do. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan go along with this. And what does Wahooty say when he introduces them to the other Melida leaders? "I have returned, my friends. I have brought 2 more Jedi hostages for our cause. Raise your hands, all of you who are surprised by this." None? That's what I thought. Me neither. And that's turns out to be exactly what Qui-Gon anticipated as well. He had recovered their lightsabers telekinetically when Wahooty's back was turned, and they make their escape, but realize they are being tracked. They are helped by a young girl named Keresi, who leads them down into the old city tombs and tunnels, where the young, who are exactly what they say they are, children tired of being forced to fight without reason or end. Children tired of being forced to fight without reason or end for a conflict so old they have no idea what the original grievance was, who came together to try to stop the fighting and start over, led by the teenagers in the group. Now, this is where the story begins to really get interesting, as well as very tragic. When this book came out, this was the 5th and last Jedi Apprentice novel to come out in 1999, and I was about the same age as the 3 cover characters, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Keresi, and Nield. This is one of the first books I ever read that explored this type of dilemma. Remember, this is quite some years before books like Among the Hidden. Well, it's okay, it's not a book, but it's a series. Higurashi, When They Cry. And, oh, there goes my Charmander. The Hunger Games were all published. Battle Royale, which I don't have the book or movie of. The same year, but it wasn't until years later that I first came across it, and this book actually deals with not the exact same, but a similar kind of situation. And I mean, at least as far as the youngsters know, and on a larger scale, this is war that is destroying everyone. Not just one group of people or one country, but the entire population. Maybe the whole world, at least as far as we know. The young mostly have only makeshift weapons, but what is left of both the Melida and the Daan populations is soldiers either too young, too wounded, too old, or too tired to really fight effectively or decisively, and their weapons are falling apart. They're not that much better than the youngs. Both sides still so consumed with the need for vengeance that they refuse to realize that they are throwing away everyone and everyone's future. Their children have taken to the underground and to the wilderness, living off the scraps and the land, wanting nothing but homes, families, and a future again. And this could be both a reflection and a commentary on what happens to any country in wartime, but it's also what happens when, even more subtly, elders and people, anyone who wields power and authority, that it is your responsibility to first care for the younger generations, particularly your own children, to listen to them, to not break up their families. And when you say you care about them, but do nothing to actually improve their childhoods and family stability, when you ignore them because their wishes either hinder your ambitions or lusts, or conflict with your views, you have no right, particularly when it's throughout their lives, when it's continuous. If that's the case, you have no right to be surprised when they finally run away and or rebel against you, sometimes both. And this is very much happening all over the world right now. This is actually a much more relevant book today than in 1999 when it was published, because now we are seeing head on. We can't really look the other way anymore, as people have been trying to do for so long, just putting off examining the consequences to the point where I don't know what's salvageable now. We are seeing the cultural effects of generations of child abandonment by families, by schools, by social justice, which has nothing to do with any rational justice. And out of sheer pathetic fear, mind you, fear that has spent the last 50 plus years embedding itself into our worldviews, our cultures, and our education, but it's really beginning to smack us in the face with how visible it is to anyone who is actually paying attention. I'll get into a fair few examples in another video. Anyway, this is the book that presents Obi-Wan with horrific choice after horrific choice. At several points in the story, he is torn between wanting to help the kids he and Qui-Gon have joined forces with in order to rescue Tahl from, and keep from becoming a war hostage, to bring peace to their planet, even though this is not, and was not, their mission in the first place. As Qui-Gon has to keep bringing up, Obi-Wan bonds with these kids, and now being away from the Jedi Temple, where at that point he was surrounded by friends his own age, now he rarely has the chance to be with other kids, save for brief spurts of rest or study in between missions, and the rare missions where they're teaming up with another Master and Padawan. And Obi-Wan needs this peer bonding, and he has the chance to get it here. In the epicenter of a heartbreaking war zone, yes, but that's not exactly a rarity for a Jedi Padawan. And what I really love about Qui-Gon's character here is that he understands this. In a way, he'd really like to give Obi-Wan this time to be with other teenagers. But they do have to retreat to care for Tahl, and again, them being there is interference in the events of a world they were not asked to take part in. Qui-Gon goes to the elders and attempts to explain the situation to them. Literally that they are throwing away their children. And the others are no better at listening than they accuse the children of never listening, not doing. And even though Obi-Wan he's asked to take part in missions where he has to go against Qui-Gon's orders, he has to go against his master's direction several times, he does feel regret and hesitation in doing so. And the tale truly is full of sadistic choices, ultimately culminating in a decision that Obi-Wan must make to either stay with the friends he made, who are genuinely trying to save their world, or to abandon his Jedi path altogether. When before, in my review of the Dark Side comic that detailed Xanatos' abandoning of the Jedi, unless I misread that whole book, which is possible, but I tried to read it several times over to see if I had done that, Qui-Gon came off as very unattentive towards Xanatos' conflict, and almost as a Padawan trade-upper. But this book has a far more sympathetic portrayal of Qui-Gon, and I think a lot closer to what the Phantom Menace wanted to portray his character as, though I believe this book does it better. The story is continued in the 6th book, which was the first to come out in 2000, Jedi Apprentice number 6, The Uncertain Path, which will be my next Jedi Apprentice review.